Weinstein Haggai and Gadi Haggai. They were murdered while walking through the fields in their kibbutz. Their bodies were then stolen by Hamas. I'm joined now by their daughter, Iris. Iris, welcome to the show. I am so sorry. How do you get through each day?
Hi, Erin. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. It's been just a long day since October 7th. Basically, I've been doing everything I can to return my parents home, and not just my parents, my community. 1 out of 4 of my community was either murdered or taken hostage that day. So my friends are still there. My friend Shiri Biba's children, Shiri, grandparents. I mean, this is a fight for my community, not just my parents. So just take it day by day.
What goes through your mind? And if I ask you anything you're uncomfortable with, I won't be offended if you don't want to answer, but do you just picture them and what they must be going through, or can you stop yourself from doing that?
What mostly goes through my mind is that I have to go on this world tour to convince people that this is a standalone humanitarian crisis. This is a crime against humanity. And the fact that my parents' bodies were stolen into Gaza as sick bargaining chips is disgusting. And for some reason, I have to convince governments that this is unacceptable, that they should condemn it, that they should demand the unconditional release of all hostages. But as you see, it's something that I can't take for granted. It's unimaginable, the thought that my friend could be raped right now as you're listening to me is just, it's unfathomable to me. The magnitude of this atrocity is just so huge that my mind can't even comprehend that my friends were burnt alive that day, that my parents were murdered. I mean, I don't have any forensic evidence. All I have is IDF intelligence. So basically it's psychological terror. Your mind keeps telling you maybe they're wrong, maybe they're not dead. And also I have to correct you. There are 101 hostages in Gaza right now, including some who are, presumed dead, like my parents, but they are still held as bargaining chips. If they weren't, I would have a grave to go to. Yesterday was my father's birthday. I can't even describe to you how hard that day was. My dad was everything to me as he was to you. He was my hero. And, the fact that I didn't have a grave to go to that day, the fact that my 8-year-old daughter, who was just with them July 2023, has to ask me, Mom, how do you even know they're dead? We don't have a grave. And the answer I have to give to my daughter, the questions she needs to ask me it's just unacceptable. The world is silent, and even worse, justifying it. So it's my mind imagines everything, and don't be scared to ask me any questions. I've answered and imagined anything.
I bet. And even just the different numbers that exist, the ones that I said, and you've just corrected me then, that's all part of the warfare, that so many other people are pushing different narratives, denying even the existence of people over there, of the atrocities that have occurred. You mentioned how let down you feel. Does that include leaders in other Western countries, supposed allies?
I'm disappointed in all world leaders. I mean, the fact alone, again, that I need to convince people that they need to demand the unconditional release of all hostages is unacceptable. My mother is the only Canadian hostages. I just came back from 2 weeks in Canada where I met the highest officials, from the Prime Minister to anybody you would think of. And, only now they finally recognize that they have a Canadian hostage. So you can see it finally in statements. Speaking of Australia, the fact that the IRGC aren't listed as a terrorist group in Australia, they should join Canada in doing that. The fact that, they're thinking of recognizing Palestine as a state, not only in Australia, but also Canada and other countries, is unbelievable. You're going to reward the murder of my parents with recognizing a terrorist group being in charge of Palestine. I just don't understand the logic behind these world leaders, what is your goal? Is your goal to have world peace, or is your goal to just put a Band-Aid on our situations? I mean, this stands against every Australian value. I actually lived in Australia for 4 years in Sydney. This is against freedom, against equality, against security, against every value of the democracies that we live and hold. And yet, for some reason, these governments are insisting to hold these innocent hostages. These are hostages who were stolen from their beds on a holiday, Saturday morning, and for some reason they're held to this position where they need to solve the Middle East crisis. No, that's not going to happen. And they need to be home. This is 420 days that these people are rotting in underground torture dungeons that the Australian government is funding by funding UNRWA. So it's infuriating to me that, something so basic needs to be pleaded. It's unimaginable.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. I've got about 30 seconds left. I want you mentioned your dad earlier. Tell me about your mum.
They were both my moral compass, exactly like you. I feel very connected to you on that regard. My parents were basically hippies. Their whole life was dedicated to, human rights and peace and creativity. My dad was a jazz musician. My mom was a mindfulness teacher. She helped children and teenagers cope with the anxieties due to the constant bombing. We lived a mile from Gaza. So, we've been bombed for 20 years from Hamas. This is unfortunately not an irregular thing dealing with terrorist groups. But they were amazing grandparents to their 7 grandchildren, and they're just very, very missed. It's something that I can't even mourn yet because I don't have closure.
No, I get that.
And that's why they need to come home.
They look absolutely beautiful. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I can't wait to see you soon and hopefully give you a hug in person soon as well. Thank you so much for coming on. Lots of love.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.